let me just give you an overview of what Stanley McCrystal did. That's General McCrystal in Afghanistan. He adopted the same strategy of counterinsurgency as the British did in Malaya, from what I've seen of it. He's killed over 1,000 Taliban and Al Qaeda commanders, and so this has taken the Taliban a step back. In a sense, the Malaya campaign showed how by winning hearts and minds of civilian population, you can create a wall of non-connections around an enemy, and also through infiltration of that enemy or opponent, you can wither the enemy from within. This seems to be the way that McCrystal has taken his approach. He has conducted an aggressive war. The guy run over 7 miles a day. He seems to take it out of the leaf of the British Army, that standard of fitness, and he only eats 1 meal a day, so he's a bit of a machine. Now, we're all more familiar with General Petreaus, but where the two are changing over their commands at the moment is not to be confused with a change of policy. Now, getting back to how he conducted his war against the Taliban, McCrystal tried to decrease the level of violence, whereas of course the Taliban strategy, as you've seen over and over again, is to employ this kind of Tet offensive style of campaign to draw the Allied forces of the West out into places like Kunduz province in the north of Afghanistan, and in Kandahar, where they've got strong support, and also in Pakistan into the Quetta region, and to then do these lightning suicide bombers and suicide gunmen attacks into the urban areas, utilising very few people, but using the explosive entry with the use of a suicide bomber, and also the use of gunmen who have protected themselves in some way by the use of explosive vests, to make it the security forces much more wary about actually shooting them for their own safety and the civilian population. So therefore the Taliban is not taking on an insurgent policy but a terrorist policy. Insurgents want to use some form of terror, but only enough to gain the compliance of the civilian population. You can see this in Iraq, where much more than in Iraq, in Lebanon, where Hezbollah, who are a Shia group rather than the Taliban, who are Sunni and Wahhabist Muslims. But in Lebanon, the Hezbollah basically supplanted the government because they provided all the services that the government should get, that should be providing for the citizens. So they became the de facto government of southern Lebanon. Now, that is also, in a sense, the strategy of the West in Afghanistan, is to supplant the Taliban by providing the services which the Taliban, in a normal context of being a normal opponent, which the Taliban is not, because they are religiously motivated or motivated by neo-feudalism in the case of the Bin Ladens and the other crime families involved in Al Qaeda. But normal governments, normal opponents, say two European style forces going against each other, would try to replace the other in terms of offering services to the local population. And so what you're seeing here is not a change in policy from McCrystal. He has merely conducted the hot phase of the operation, and now General Petreaus, who's more senior, is coming in to complete the phase of the overall policy. Just because McCrystal is retiring does not mean that he has been sacked. Okay, he has obviously done a very good job, but the troops on the ground did not feel this. It had some complaints that they could not fire back on the Taliban, but by not firing back, you're not making a connection with civilians via the bullets. That is, the bullets are not hitting the meat and causing the distress to the civilian population, and so you're reducing the overall level of violence, which is a win in terms of what the Western strategy is. And so now General Petreaus will come in and work with the NGOs and other non-governmental organisations and do the things that he did in Iraq, where you're building up the infrastructure and you're supplanting the Taliban, and that is the overall way to break connections and to win the peace, because it's much more important to win the peace than to just win the war. Thank you. Peace.